Hello, my name's Tom Jamison. 2002, I was working at the Hyatt Regency Milwaukee, and I had a front office manager position to fill. And filling positions is usually not a big deal. We do it every day, but this one was different. I had, over the last 60 days, I had hired and lost 3 different front office managers, and all for varying reasons. And on top of that, I had a rookie housekeeping manager. His name was Steve. And Steve had worked with me about 6 months and was full of himself. And he kept coming to my office telling me, hey, Tom, I can do that front office manager job for you. And I kept pushing him back and saying, Steve, you're just not ready. It's a big jump. So at the time, I was frustrated. I could not fill a front office manager position. Plus, I had Steve coming into my office a couple times a week asking for an update on the position and if he could have it. So after a little bit of Steve wearing me down, I, much to my chagrin, gave him the position. Steve was delighted. And for the first 2 weeks, or first really couple months, Steve was hooked to my hip, asking me all kinds of questions, listening to my coaching, asking what he could do better to grow into his position. And lo and behold, 6 months passed and Steve was doing a great job. A year passed and he really blossomed and filled the position and did a great job. So we were all happy. So Steve's been in the position now about 18 months, maybe a little longer, and he comes running into my office one day and he says, Tom, I know the next job I want. And I said, Steve, you've barely gotten this one complete. He goes, no, I want to go to San Francisco. I said, well, what hotel? And he tells me, and I said, Steve, look, that hotel's 3 times our size. It's over 1,000 rooms. It's a union property. You've never worked with unions. It's a high-profile hotel in our company, family owned, and has corporate people in and out there every month. So the pressure is just unbelievable. And Steve kind of went out of my office and said, okay, but he was back the next week asking for the job again and the next week. And so finally I said, Steve, look, I'll tell you what, I'll call my counterpart and I'll tell him the good and the bad. And so which I did. And lo and behold, Steve gets the job in San Francisco. So I congratulate him and send him off. My career moves along and I move to Texas. And I hear through the grapevine that Steve's doing well in San Francisco, and he's managed the department he's in very well. And so it's great for me to hear this good news about Steve. I've been in Texas a couple years and I post now an executive level leadership position. Guess who calls me? Steve calls me and says, Tom, I want to come work for you again. And I started to say, Steve, you're not. But by that time, I had no fight left in me, and I knew Steve pretty well. And so for this position, I gave him some high expectations, and I said, if you can do this, you can come. And he came. And Steve at this position really blossomed. And he truly became one of the leaders in the hotel and was very well thought of, and it helped launch his career from that moment on. And Steve and I's paths we haven't worked together now in 10 years. Except for one instance. About 6 years ago, I get a call from a headhunter for Carnival Cruise Lines for a hotel director, and guess what they asked me? Hey, do you want to work on a cruise ship for 8 months out of your life and run a hotel? And I said, nope, that job's not for me, but I know just the guy for you. And so I hooked him up with Steve, and Steve is now working for Carnival Cruise Lines. So it brings us to the present day. Steve and I are connected on LinkedIn. We catch up every once in a while, and my LinkedIn feed says Steve's anniversary at Carnival. So I shoot him a quick note and say, congratulations, don't think anything of it. The next thing that happened was really unexpected. A couple days later, I get a phone call from Steve. He's on the boat and he says, hey, Tom. He says, thanks for that congratulatory note. I really appreciate it. And we had talked about some things, and he goes, hey, there's really a reason for my call that I made this. And I said, because I've never told you this. And I said, Steve, what's that? He says, I was thinking I'd never be where I am today without the hours you poured into me, the mentoring, and the opportunities you gave me. And I said, wow, Steve, thanks. I really appreciate that. Always something great to hear when someone tells you that. And then we ended the call with some small chat and hung up the phone. And as we hung up the phone, I paused. And then it made me think, am I doing what I did to Steve today in my hotel as a GM with everything that I have on my plate? In HVMG, we're about finding and developing talent. After that call, I made a commitment that I'm going to take part of every day to make sure that I am doing what I did with Steve years ago to the team I'm currently working with. And the payoff for me is, down the road, I hope to get another call that says, hey, Tom, just want to thank you for the hours you poured into me and the opportunities you gave me.